Welcome your hosts, Caddy Frank and Aaron Fitzgerald, as they lead discussions about substance use disorder and the journey to recovery. You're listening to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution.
Well, good day. How is everybody in the house?
Good morning, Caddy. Nice to be here. Hello, listeners.
And Jay, say hi.
Hey.
Hey.
Before we get started, and introduce our guest, I would just like to give special thanks to our generous funders, including the Patrick and Amy Butler Family Foundation, Otto Bremer Trust, the Sauer Family Foundation, and the Hardenberg Foundation, along with all of you. Thank you very much. We would not be here without you.
We need everybody in the family to help us out.
Yeah.
Well, hi, my name is Caddy Frank, and I'm here with Aaron Fitzgerald. And on the other mic, we have, who is this?
Hey, I'm Dr. J. Orne.
Dr. J. Doctor, I'm so impressed. We have a doctor in the house.
Not a medical doctor, but I can.
You can do doctor.
I can do your surveys for you.
There you go. Oh,
love
that's
it.
so cool. So cool. I love it when somebody gets to introduce themselves with something like that. Oh, well, we're here with Minnesota Recovery Connection, Redefining Recovery, Recovery Revolution. And we have an incredible guest. But before we get to our guest, we have to open up the show. Aaron, what's right with you today?
What is right with me today? What's right with me today is just I'm getting ready for a move, and everything is kind of coming together in like a glorious mess. But I think most of the mess part is in my brain. It's pretty glorious. I'm really excited about it. And that's just right with me
You've
today.
got a big change coming up, and we're going to talk all about that some other time.
Another
I can
day.
hardly wait.
Yeah. What's right with you, Miss Candy?
There's just a lot going on at the old machine factory, Minnesota Recovery Connection, doing a lot of stuff, preparing for a big event that's going to happen. By the time this airs, it will all be over, and I'll have slept for a few days. But, everything's going to be just fine. Your move is going to be just fine. My event is going to be just fine. So as I drove here today, I was like, just take a deep breath. It'll all be okay.
I think all three of us did that on the way in today.
Absolutely. That's what we were talking about before the show.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
Jay, so what's right with you today, my friend?
Well, I'm going to stick with the topic of the move because over the weekend, I, finally got all the furniture in my new apartment set up and exactly where it needs to go. All the boxes are done. Just need to get art up on the walls. And I don't know, that's really special for me, like having gone from home ownership back before drugs to homeless living in my car to now, having this beautiful apartment again in my life. Like, it's just really great.
Isn't recovery amazing?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Same kind of steps with the vehicle, right? Baby steps
Yes.
moving up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. I'm so glad that you're here. Well, Jay, we've kind of already introduced you a little bit. You're coming to us from the Aliveness Project as the research scientist, and you work in both the HIV and harm reduction departments. Say more.
Yeah.
There's just so many parts of your life that I'm just fascinated by. Truly, you're amazing.
So tell us a little bit about you initially. Like, how did you get to this space and place where you're at? Because I think that's so interesting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, before coming to the Aliveness Project, I got my PhD in sociology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and, sort of specialized in qualitative research and, doing work with LGBTQ communities. I wrote this book called Boys Town, about gay nightlife in Chicago, and eventually got a professorship at Drexel University, and then didn't get tenure because I was doing too much meth.
Well, that would interrupt the cycle potentially.
That interrupts things. But then I came out here to Minnesota to go to the Pride Institute for rehab and just stuck around because of the wonderful recovery community here. And, and started volunteering at the Aliveness Project, when I had about 3 months sober. And after a while, they had a position open in harm reduction, and, sort of the rest is history. Nowadays I I manage the HIV prevention and harm reduction department at Aliveness. We got about 10 people doing wonderful things around the community, which we can definitely talk plenty more about later. And then kind of just through force of will, I really wanted to bring my research skills, to Aliveness. And so we started getting we have a couple research projects going on right now.
Wow. So how long have you been in Minnesota then?
Yesterday was 3 years, 3 months, because it exactly coincides with my sober date. So
nice. I came to Minnesota and you found that recovery time, didn't you?
Yep.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Very good. How did you get connected with the Aliveness Project?
So the Aliveness Project actually goes out to the Pride Institute every week and offers this group called A+, which is a support group for people living with HIV that are in early recovery, and that's where I first met them. My first meeting of the Aliveness Project in that support group, I was just bawling my eyes out because it was like 3 days. And I was just processing some really difficult things, and so it really imprinted on me, and getting a chance to, when I got out, they offer free meals, right?
Wow.
Every weekday, and so that place just kept me fed, when I was in early recovery. So I really, wanted to be involved more.
When you chose the Pride Institute on your own, correct?
Yeah, it was actually suggested to me by my doctor out in Philadelphia where I was living. Yeah.
That's
Sweet.
incredible.
We say the land of 10,000 treatment centers, and then we can specialize in some of our recovery needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
How great that your doctor suggested that.
Yeah, I mean, he had been suggesting it for a while.
How do you know?
How do you know? Yeah, he'd been suggesting it for a while, but it's actually a really funny story because, as is typical, right? I had made a plan, to go to rehab, and then, came down and was like, oh, never mind. I'm good. And so I'd made about 3 of those plans. And eventually, I was living in my car at the time and was in Kansas and decided that like, this was I'm ready. I can't do this anymore. And so I drove up to Minnesota knowing that like, okay, this is the rehab that I'm going to go to. I know they got a spot for me. I'd never been to rehab before, so I didn't know that my spot was gone because I didn't show up previously. And so I just showed up at the door and was like, hey, I'm here.
And they said
no, you can't. And so I was like, okay, that's cool. Let me know when a spot opens up. I live in my car, so I'm just going to go hang out in the parking lot. And then they were like, what? Give me 20 minutes. And they were like, can you come back tomorrow? Wow. We will try to fit you in. So that was really brilliant.
I love that.
Yeah.
They really made us face it.
But like, I was not leaving that place without.
That's so great that you were determined enough. And when you got there, you were like, let me know. I'm right here. I'm just going to hang out in the parking lot.
Parking lot or not, I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because at that point, I was sure that if I would just drive off and, my psychosis was getting worse and worse. And so, I just figured at some point I would just end up disappearing if I left that space. So
it's so interesting when your mind actually does take care of you. You knew if you left that parking lot that the risk was on.
Absolutely.
So did the people behind that door. And that's really the reason why I mentioned that is because that window of opportunity can close if we don't take action right away. And sometimes action doesn't happen right away. And in this case, okay, give us 24 hours. Can you hang up for 24 hours? And that parking lot was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and, and luckily I was able to, be able to afford to go to a hotel room that night, and
make it work for 24 hours.
Sure.
You found a way.
Sure.
Because you were determined.
Then, I was determined then.
Then, yeah. Oh.
We just have to seize that opportunity.
And jump right into it, both feet. Wow. Thank you so much, Jay. Oh, I'm so excited. This is such a good conversation. So excited. So we'll be right back. Redefining Recovery Revolution. See you in a few.
Welcome back to Redefining Recovery, a recovery revolution. I am Erin Fitzgerald. Across from me is Caddy Frink, and joining us today from the Aliveness Project is Jay Orne. We are so glad that you are here. Before we went to break, Jay was telling us about how he got into the Pride Institute and found recovery, and we are grateful for that because he's got an amazing story. And we need to talk about the Aliveness Project, though, because I love what you're doing there. You have a PhD in research and such. So, I mean, this is so awesome that you're able to use it in this community.
Yes.
Will you tell
Absolutely.
us about Aliveness Project, kind of the history, and then tell us about what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So the Aliveness Project is a center for people living with HIV that's, in South Minneapolis, but serves anybody living with HIV in the state of Minnesota. And it started back in 1985. We really like to sort of joke that it started as a potluck, right? It was a way for people who were, struggling with HIV and AIDS to just come together for community and share food and help each other with basic needs and friendship in a time when that was very difficult. And so for the almost now 40 years that we've been around,
Wow.
we have just expanded, the Aliveness Project today. We're a community center that offers, daily during the week, hot meals for lunch. People can take food to go, 60 pounds of food at the food shelf every month. As well as a lot of other social services like case management, housing programs, medical nutrition therapy, lots of stuff. And then where I work, which is the HIV prevention and outreach side of things and the harm reduction side of things. So,
You guys really have that wraparound services that I really love.
absolutely.
And also what I love is that when you walk up to the Aliveness Project, it's just like a little door and it doesn't look like much. And then you walk indoors and it's just like this huge space with lots of people really just like having a good time, getting what they need. And like, oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the place really stretches out. You don't realize how deep it's going to be.
Yeah.
And we just opened the whole bottom floor for our Thrive Clinic, which offers free prep. And, we're going to be expanding hopefully someday into some HIV care, STI testing. We offer hormones for people that need them in the trans community. We're expanding into like psychiatric medication. Like we're just doing all the things these days. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting because you're in my neighborhood. I live in South Minneapolis, and so I know exactly where you are. I was in a long time ago, but I haven't been in recently since all of these amazing expansions. And being a woman of a certain age, remembering back to the mid '80s and what was going on, and understanding that it really was a community getting together to help one another out, and it goes to show when there is something going on, there is help available, but we have to band together and we have to pull together. Talk about some of those real formative years. Like how did things go from those mid 80s when there was so much sadness going on and so much unknown, kind of if some of that history, because I think there's going to be people that are listening that aren't old enough to kind of know what was going on then, and then where we've come to, and now the fact that you're going to be distributing different medications all over the globe of help for people. What does that look like from then kind of ish to now ish?
Yeah, I mean, in the 80s, you have to take us back to that time. You're talking about a time that Ronald Reagan didn't even talk about HIV and AIDS publicly until 1987. HIV was originally called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, when it was classified by the CDC, and so really early on, it became something that was stigmatized, was that, about a group of people that we really didn't care for.
Right.
And it really wasn't until, Ryan White, this little boy, right, got HIV. And, it really captured the nation because he wasn't allowed to go to school. The parents at his school were, really afraid that their children were going to catch HIV from him, even though that's not how one gets HIV.
Right.
You can't get HIV from sharing a water bottle or anything like that. And so the Ryan White Act was really formative, and of course the work of ACT UP, which was like the original HIV/AIDS activist organization. They did all kinds of really miraculous things, and before Occupy Wall Street was closing down things, you had ACT UP closing the New York Stock Exchange, hosting die-ins and things like that. And so this sort of pressure, which came from within the community, it combined with the story of this little boy created the Ryan White Act, which is still around today, which guarantees that if you're a person living with HIV, that you're going to get the health care that you need. And that's what funds most of the work at the Aliveness Project, in addition to donations. And that really guarantees that not just that you're going to get your HIV meds, but that, we care about your holistic health, right? The whole person. Because people are more than just their HIV diagnosis.
Well, I think the way Aaron said, the wraparound care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what we say in substance use disorder as well, right? We're more than our label. Yeah. So there was so much stigma. And I'm so grateful that now there's more education around HIV and AIDS, so that people don't have to live in fear like they had. Like, I'm really
and
glad for that.
die.
And die as well. Yes. People are living.
I lost several friends back in the day, because there was nothing else that was going on there was, but there wasn't. This is back in the late 80s when it was still so stigmatized. And I'll never forget the quilts in Washington, D.C. The quilt, I can't remember what it was called, but all the quilts of all the people that had passed away from HIV and AIDS. And it just brought to light what was going on. And it's still happening today. What's the rate of infection? I mean, we've gone through a lot of roller coasters over the years. What's going on in that community?
Absolutely. So, Minnesota is considered a pretty low incidence state for HIV. The high incidence states are going to be places like, New York, California, places that have really high populations, especially these big cities. But Minnesota does, so Minnesota has about 10,000 people that are living with HIV. And, around 1,000 of them don't know it. So testing is still really necessary here in Minnesota. There's around I think the number's around between 250 and 300 new cases of HIV that are here in Minnesota every year. But what we're particularly concerned with, and I think is really relevant to this show, is that there's been an outbreak of HIV amongst people with a history of injection drug use here in the Twin Cities, as well as in St. Louis County and Duluth, for the last several years. And so that was really the impetus behind creating the harm reduction program at Aliveness.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Say more.
Yeah. Talk about it more. I mean,
because doing so many projects.
Yeah. So many people don't understand where this relationship crosses over. And we all, if many people, depending upon where they are in their life cycle, younger, older, we have these written stories in our heads about where does HIV come from, and it's all this, but it ain't all that. It isn't about the inner people having sexual relationships with people. It's about the interactions that people have when they're using substance use and having substance use disorder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, syringe exchanges were really, in harm reduction programs generally, were really championed by people looking to prevent HIV.
Right.
And so, we continue that today, but also thinking about, again, that holistic care of people, and so, these days we operate a harm reduction van, goes around the Twin Cities, offers, harm reduction supplies. I like to call us we're like a coffee shop for drug paraphernalia. There's a menu. You just order off the menu and you can get whatever you want.
Yep, folks are lined up and happy to see you.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things on that menu? Because again, there are people that are listening to the show that are not part of our community, that it's like, okay, what is this? What do you mean by that? So I'd really, give us some indication of what's on the menu here.
Absolutely. So, we offer kits for safer injections. So that's going to have new sterile needles, right? So that way people can use a new needle every time, which is not just important in order to prevent sharing needles for HIV or hepatitis C, but also, wounds. If you reuse a needle, you're much more likely to get a wound afterwards. It also has all of the a little accoutrement that you might need, tourniquets, Band-Aids, antibacterial ointment, alcohol swabs, and we offer all those things in order, so that way people can inject safer. But we also offer a lot of, what I like to cheekily call like injection alternatives.
And what would that be?
Yeah. So, we offer glassware, like bubbles for smoking meth, or, stems, which are straight glass tubes for smoking crack, or, safer snorting. And, the reason that we really offer these is because, early on we didn't really have the funding in order to be able to offer glassware. And people were coming up to me and were like, well, I'd rather smoke, but if all you have is needles, then I'm going to use today, and and I'll inject. And so I felt like, are we running a harm maximization program here? Because if people want to do it in a safer way, I want to be able to provide all the things that they need.
Good for you for taking action.
Yeah, and thanks to Minnesota for decriminalizing drug paraphernalia last year. I was joking with you last week when we were talking about this, that I was driving around my van full of misdemeanors for quite a while. Like, just more bubbles than you've ever seen in your life. Yeah.
Well, and I think you said something that's really important. If somebody's going to use, they're going to use, regardless if they're going to do it safe or otherwise. But and people don't necessarily understand the addiction part, and that is, you're going to use. And how can we get to the point where we can say that's okay, but can we do it safer? Can we do it so that your harm to yourself or the person next to you might not be as much at risk? Wow, that was tough to say. And I think that's the thing that I remember, like 2-3 years ago, somebody in some county meeting was saying all people are doing now is putting these bubbles and these syringes in front of my kids, and it's just going to make them use. And it's kind of like, no, not really. No, they don't really know what it is. And you're not giving permission, you're actually giving safety.
Absolutely.
And that's where the magic is.
I was blessed to be able to go out with the van a couple of weeks ago, and it was really wonderful. One thing that I really appreciated was, because you go to several locations on a regular basis, so folks know when you're going to be there. And right before we were leaving, about 10 minutes before we were going to close down, somebody came running off of the train and they said, "Yes, I missed you guys 2 weeks in a row, man." He was so grateful to see you and be able to get the supplies. And it was just like love, That's what we talk about, like giving people hope, and they know where to find us. They know that we care. Yeah.
Absolutely. Getting to, know our regulars and being a non-judgmental, loving, empathetic place where, people can just come and talk as people, these are, a lot of the folks that we see, are unstably housed, and are facing a lot of difficulties in their life. And we are a stable, consistent spot where, we can get supplies, that you might need to use, but, sometimes we also have t-shirts and socks, and, and we have a snack, and we have an ear that can listen to what's going on. And so sometimes it's not the goal necessarily. We're never pressuring anybody, but we are also there that if someone's like, you know what, I want to get off this stuff, and then we can be like, hey, I got connections at all the methadone clinics in town.
Right.
I got connections at, I can call someone and get you a telehealth appointment for Suboxone right now.
Right.
And that's great, because sometimes they'll just jump in the car and we're able to go. And that's one of the reasons that we really value, people with lived experience working in the field. That way they can really connect with people and sharing their stories, sure, but also being able to empathize. And it's not some other people that we're serving, it's people like me.
We can definitely relate to what they're going through.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the new projects that you have going on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about our syringe buyback program that we're
Yeah.
about to implement. You know, they're I've been able to see like online, some places like Boston and New York have tried to implement this before, but there's very little information out there about it. But basically, we're going to be paying people a $5 Cub gift card in order to bring a full Sharps 1 quart Sharps container back to the van. So we give out these needles, and sometimes we often do like syringe cleanups, like we go around the area and collect syringes. But it would be so much better if you give these things a price tag, then people want to keep them and bring them back, and then we're able to offer them food in exchange for this. And so I'm really excited to hopefully see that get off the ground.
Yeah.
Because the city and the county pay ridiculous amounts of money for cleanup of these things. And so if we can, for a much cheaper cost, and get people to return it like a recycling program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And give them the benefit of maybe something good to eat. You get a
Absolutely.
$5 Cub card, that gets you something.
Yeah.
And if you do a couple of those now, do you give them the containers as well so
Yeah.
that they can? Okay. So magical. It's interesting. You talk about syringes. I was just with somebody, and they live in St. Paul, in a nice-ish area, kind of average folk area, and there was a community garden space, and one of the people was moving around some materials in the garden space, and they found some syringes, and the person who found them freaked the bejesus out because this was not their wheelhouse. And so the individual that I was with said, yeah, okay, don't freak out. Well, should we call the police? Should we call this? Should we call that? And it sounded kind of like, it's like, okay, folks, when you find something like this, then cool down. It's everywhere. You just might not see it.
Sure.
And so now what you can do is go, what can I do in my neighborhood to possibly help that person that's what they have to do? And rather than go, I got to call the police, maybe call the Aliveness Project, or maybe call MRC, or maybe call an organization and say, hey, I think there's some activity in my neighborhood. What can I do to help people, not throw the law at them? It's like, it was just such an interesting story when you said that, because it's like, hey, maybe you can collect it, get that $5 gift card and give it to somebody on the street. Who knows? But you could open up all kinds of opportunities for people if we don't freak out when we see these things. And I think that's what happens a lot when we think about some of the overarching concerns about people who are struggling with substance use. It's like, it's them over there, or the individuals that have HIV. It's like, it's them over there. And it's like, no, it's right here. And that's where I think we have to remember, and that it is right in your neighborhood. It is not hiding behind some dumpster someplace. It might be there too, and that's where you get to walk into these places and say, it's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, as the manager of the department, I talk to a lot of people when, I'm the face when people have complaints that the van is showing up in their neighborhood. Like, you're bringing those people into our neighborhood, but we're not bringing people anywhere. We're following where people are hanging out on the street already, and just trying to offer the supplies and the love that they need. Yeah.
Right. Yes, because healing individuals helps heal our communities as well. Yeah. That's something that I think people forget.
Yeah. I think that, thank you. I think that's very much what it is. And that is, it's, I just think of where we have come from almost 40 plus years ago, of such incredible judgment and fear, to now to a place of like, okay. So you have a PhD, you've got all these fancy letters behind your name, and you've got all these like studies that you do. What are some of the studies that you're working on?
So I'm really excited about a project, a study that we're right about to start getting participants for, which is, so we're going to be giving, it's a randomized trial. So that means then half of the group is going to get the intervention and the other half is not. And it's randomly assigned, who gets what. But we're going to be offering unlimited Metro Transit passes to people living with HIV that are experiencing unstable housing. And so, half the group is going to get this transit pass, and the other half, just continues living their life as normal. And then hopefully what we're going to be able to show, right, is that having access to transportation on a regular and independent basis, right, not having to rely on calling a medical cab or something like that. I don't know if y'all have ever taken those medical cabs where 48, you call 48 hours ahead of time and then they show up in a 6-hour window.
I've heard so many horror stories.
So many horror
It's incredibly
stories.
difficult. So to be able to give someone the independence of having a Metro Transit pass, and also for people experiencing unstable housing, the Metro, if people have ridden the Metro recently, you know that it's also a place where, folks use it as housing. And so to be able to be safely and legally on the train, and just, hey, here's my pass. Yeah, tap it. I'm hoping that also helps, people's access to food and safety. So that'll be running for about 6 months, and hopefully we come away with some persuasive evidence that it works. So that way maybe we can convince policymakers that it would be a good idea.
Yeah, that seems like a fairly simple fix for a lot of people, or like, not a fix, but just a step. One of those tools.
Yeah, if you can get to the place that you need to go to get the help that you need to get without having to wait 48 hours and then have a 6-hour window, because there isn't a place on the planet that has you a 6-hour window that you can get services. It doesn't work that way. I mean, how amazing would that be if somebody begins to pull themselves together with this support? They could become the person that they need to become today or tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, absolutely. And be able to have access easier to Aliveness Project services. I mean, that's what I think is great about being able to bring research into a place like the Aliveness Project, is because community often knows what is working, right? Like they know what will work. Giving people transit passes doesn't sound like a revolutionary idea, because anybody off the street could be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But, we don't have the evidence base to be able to convince people that it's worth the money, right? And so to be able to do research studies that, can find that evidence base, but also can just do the thing that we need in the meantime while we're studying it. We can do the thing that we know is going to work, and at least will have helped some people in the meantime.
Yeah.
It makes me think about one of the volunteers that we had at our office last week. He's like, hey, Caddy, do you guys have any best tokens? And I'm like, yeah. I said, just so I know what's going on. He's like, I just got to get home. I'm like, I think I can do that. I can get you home. And he relaxed. He's like, yeah, I have an option now. And I just thought, it's such a simple thing that all of us who have cars and have had cars and have, and putting air quotes up, normal life, we take absolutely for granted.
Just to get to a safe space. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just to get to a safe space, or the next space that you need to go to get the resources that you need.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's monumental. It just makes me really think, when I was on the bus 100 years ago, and when I got my DWI, I couldn't drive for a year. So hello, Metro Transit. It was my friend. And it saved my life. I could get to work. I could get to the store. I could get where I needed to go. And I was so grateful that we had a pretty good system at the time. And so here we have individuals of all different kinds and shapes and situations that this could be a big piece that could literally change their lives.
I hope so.
Oh, gosh, I'm so intrigued. Anything else you got going on?
Let's see. We also got a pilot project that we're doing. So we're going to be offering some incentives to folks that have been long-term out of care for HIV for whatever reason. They haven't been to the doctor in a while. And so we're going to be offering them some incentives in order to be able to bring them back in. Y'all might be familiar with, in the recovery space, what's called contingency management, right? Like, people know what they want to do already, and you just give them that little dopamine hit from
little
the incentives.
incentive.
And so we designed an incentive structure for HIV care. around that.
Nice. We're going to pick that one back up after this break. So, wow. Oh, I just love all this wonderful stuff you're doing. We'll be back in a little bit. Welcome to, and thank you for listening to Redefining Recovery, a Recovery Revolution with Aaron and Jay and Caddy. Woohoo!
Welcome back. We're having a good old time jamming to some music over here.
You bet.
I like our intro music. Thanks for coming back to Redefining Recovery. It is a recovery revolution. And before break, Jay was just telling us about another new incentive that they've got going on at the Aliveness Project. But we got cut off a little bit there. So say a little more.
Sure. I mean, so contingency management is this strategy in the substance use space, right? In order to encourage people's recovery through small economic incentives, usually at best cash, but like gift cards and stuff like that. And it's best structured and it's when there's multiple lines of incentives, where, for instance, there's this great program called the START program in Boston that I saw at a conference over the summer. And so they have 3 lines in their contingency management program, right? Attending group, right, gets you, $1 every time you attend group. Having a negative UA might get you an additional bonus.
Mhm.
And, engaging in your exercise plan, because we all know exercise, based recovery is really effective.
Mhm.
And so you do all of those things and you can earn up to $15 a week.
Wow.
And that doesn't sound like much, right? But it works on the same dopamine pathways
Mhm.
that drugs do.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And if that $15 is mine and I get to do what I want with it,
Hot
that's a big
diggity
bonus.
dog. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just that little extra bonus. And
Mhm.
so, I took that really successful idea that, is in the substance use space. And I was like, well, can we use this as well to encourage people who have maybe been having difficulties but want to engage in their HIV care, to re-engage in their HIV care. So, attending their doctor's appointment, that's a small incentive, meeting with their case manager in order to talk about how their prescription and medication adherence is going. That's another small incentive. And then achieving viral suppression, this huge deal. We want folks to become undetectable, because undetectable means untransmittable, right? We know that if we can't detect it, then they can't transmit it to other people. And so this is how we end HIV,
Right.
and, is by making sure that everybody gets on their meds.
Mhm.
And so, if a small amount of money can help do that, and really help people solve the problems that, money can solve in their lives.
Mhm.
Yeah, just those tiny little incentives. I remember in my early recovery of just anything, really, just like having the motivation to do things that I needed to do or should be doing because I should be doing them,
Mhm.
were really difficult. And so having even just that small, like you said, a little tiny monetary incentive.
Absolutely. And as a former meth user, I mean, the drain of motivation and the drain of pleasure, was very present. I was just talking with someone at a recovery meeting about this yesterday, and that, it took 6, 9, a year, in order for me to really enjoy doing again
Yep.
the things that I enjoyed doing previously. I mean, I love playing video games, but, I didn't have the attention span to play a video game. I mean, I could barely sit through a movie when I first got into recovery, but, I just had to sort of stick with it and keep trying different things in order to find what was going to get me the that little boost of pleasure in a time that when everything felt very flat.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings me to a slide that we have in our training where, a meth user, it takes about 14 months before somebody really, I call it, comes kind of back online.
Sure.
It's just like this gradual process. And you just described it beautifully. It's like you need, and Aaron said, you need something to kind of get you going. And just that little hit of that dopamine can be just enough to go, oh, I feel that much better. Oh, maybe if I do it again and again, and I ain't getting high, what could happen?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that goes back to the exercise-based recovery there, that, getting that little hit from, from working out, can really go a long way to help repairing those pathways.
Yeah.
For sure. So you already started talking just a little bit about what you do for enjoyment in recovery, but do you have anything that you'd like to share about Aliveness before you tell us what recovery has done for you? Or did we touch all of the things? I think that we have, everything that we had chatted about, I think we've gotten.
I'd be curious, just real quick, how many folks do you see in a day, in a week? What does that look like in terms of like how many folks are walking through your door getting support?
Sure. I mean, it depends upon, whether we're talking about Aliveness proper, which only serves people that are living with HIV, or, the community center or the larger programs that we offer outside of it.
So people walking in your door.
But yeah, people walking in the door, we serve around 250 to 300 meals a day.
Wow.
We'll see, around 1,200, people just in the meal program over the course of a year. But the harm reduction program, has had last year, it had 14,000 encounters with people on the street.
Beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Boots on the ground.
Just blew my mind. So,
and there's so much more space to do more as well. I mean, if we had more money, just say it. If we had more money, I could have that van out twice a day, 7 days a week. And I still wouldn't even scratch the surface of the number of people that are out there that we could help.
Yeah.
There's so many people that need all of our services, and there is money out there. We know there is. And now we just need to keep scraping along to find it, to keep people alive.
Yeah.
I say substance use disorder and the HIV space that we're in, if we can keep people alive long enough for them to see what their life can look like, that's the magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just money. We have a fantastic board, especially Michelle, who's on our board, who get donations of whether it's snacks or hygiene supplies or old clothing or boots. We do take those, especially things like hygiene supplies, which we go through quite a bit. Just being able to offer someone, a nice a nice little travel size thing of body wash instead of jail soap. Right. Like give somebody some dignity.
Right.
So yeah, it's not just money that, it's done.
Money
any kind of donation. Money don't hurt though, because it's unrestricted funds.
Yes.
That's funny. So thank you. I'm so grateful that Aliveness Project has you.
Oh,
truly. I mean, to come in
gift.
there and like do all these things that you're doing. But what I like you as a human and as what you're doing in the recovery community. So tell us a little bit about Jay and what recovery means to you.
What recovery means to me. It's interesting. I both feel like a completely new person and like the person that I was before drugs. Because I came to meth late, in my early 30s. And so there was a large period of my life where I was a normie,
right?
In terms of I mean, I was maybe a little heavy drinker at times, but it goes along with literally writing a book about nightlife.
There you go.
You had to be in the community.
being out, but nightlife was a huge part of my life, and but I didn't touch meth until my early 30s, and then it was just very quick, right? So it's really interesting to me that recovery has not only recovery in terms of that restored sense that it's restored some of the place in my life of some things like video games and friends and family, coming back into my life. But, I also sometimes feel like, a different person,
Yeah.
a different person that I was, because, it's
Maybe
a
a
very transformative experience.
A whole person.
a wholer person. I was
Yeah.
going to say, I can relate very much to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's what happens. And that is we sort of find ourselves again. And then we sort of put all those pieces together of who we were at one time and another. And like all of a sudden, this blossoming human comes out of this.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, you're blossoming.
Oh, that's that.
Yeah. Jay's like, I want to talk more.
It's over?
It's
I'm
over.
sorry.
Yeah. That
No,
means you're coming back.
I could keep going.
I know.
Yes, I would love to.
It's a conversation about so many things.
Yes.
So, well, thank you,
so
Jay.
much for being here.
Yes, we're grateful to
Thank
have
you
you
so
in
much
our,
for having me.
and in our community. We are grateful. So please reach out to us, join us, supporting our mission of becoming a monthly donor, annual donor, volunteer at Minnesota Recovery Connection, minnesotarecovery.org. Thank you. Way over time.